Well, the head gasket has finally failed in my 1999 Dodge Stratus. I'm just about to hit 185,000 miles, but it's a rather interesting failure because normally when you see head gasket failures, they're all coolant related. Either you get coolant on the cylinders or all that stuff, you know. But this one actually has a oil failure because that's. I'll show you when I get under the engine, but there's on these engines on the rear four cylinders a oil gallery that goes from the block to the head, and that's a very common failure on these engines. So it's just pouring oil out the back of the block, and it's also starting to seep antifreeze. If you look right on the intake manifold, right there on that lip right there, I don't know if the camera picks it up, it's seeping antifreeze, and it's also leaking antifreeze down the exhaust manifold in the catalytic converter. So when you start it up after it's been heated up and pressurized, you get steam coming out from under the engine because the coolant is burning off. We'll have a look underneath. Yeah, you see the oil. It's all down the side of the engine, as well as the camshaft seals are seeping a little bit, and those will be replaced, as well as the front main. If you look under here, see more oil. Show you as best as possible. But look right there, you see where it's all soaked. That's where it's leaking from. So I'm gonna first start by unbolting the 4 bolts that hold the exhaust manifold to the catalytic converter, so we can remove the manifold. Was the head attached? Or yeah, what I meant to say was remove the head was the manifold attached. There we go. But anyway, well, I got the exhaust manifold bolts off. They hold it onto the catalytic converter. Just 4 of them, 1/2 inch. Took around an hour and a half to just get these 4 bolts off. They're very tight and rusty, and the top ones are very difficult to get to. You have to use a long extension with a swivel on it, and I broke one of them off. So the bolts themselves are loose from the catalytic converter, but they're still stuck in the exhaust manifold. But I'll remove those and from the manifold when the head comes off, and then replace all 4 bolts. So, well, I got the antifreeze drain now. That was fairly simple. Just pull off the bottom radiator hose off the engine, which is right there, that big black thing, and in a bucket. I'll put it in a bottle later so I don't spill it. There's a better view of the hose. So just pull that clamp off right there and pull the hose off. And pretty much all we need to do is pretty much it for getting underneath of it. Working it, I'm gonna move back over there and pull that wheel off and continue disassembling the belt and the timing stuff. Well, so I got the wheel off. I got the belts off for the alternator and the AC belt, and as well as the power steering belt. Take the alternator belt off. You just loosen this bolt off right here, and then you turn this backwards, and it just moves the whole alternator back, and it loosens it off. And to get the power steering belt off, you come through here. So the power steering pump, you loosen that bolt right there off, and you put a 1/2 inch breaker bar in that square hole right there, and you turn the water pump back, and it loosens the bolt off. Now to get the harmonic balancer off, you need a special Chrysler harmonic balancer puller. There's a part number for it right there. Now, because this is different than like a GM or Ford type harmonic balancer, because you see the hole doesn't go all the way through, and there's no shaft key on it, so it's a press fit on the crank. So you get the special puller. Now what's different than a regular puller is you get the 2 rods, whichever length you need. This one, you need a longer one for this. You put it in this hole here, like so, and this pushes in, goes in through the hole and pushes off flashlight to work, pushes off the back of the crank in there. And that's how you get it off. Without this tool, it would be very difficult to remove the pulley. And it also removes that bottom outer timing cover, which is this piece here. It's on like so. There's a 10mm bolt right here, and another smaller one that goes right there, which is a 8mm. Now, so to have that off, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the two bolts that hold on the motor mount underneath, which are right here. See them right there and right there. Well, so now I have removed the two 15mm bolts that hold the outer motor mount piece to the frame. When you remove these two bolts, you want to jack the engine up just so there's no load on this motor mount. And then you want to remove these three 15mm bolts as well. One of mine is missing because whoever did the timing belt lost, did a total rubbish job of it, but I'm going to remove those. And these pieces are also bolted together like so, and it's impossible to get them out as one piece. So you have to remove these three 13mm bolts. I'm going to remove this piece first, and to take this piece out, you cannot pull the bolts out of this piece on the car, so you have to, that's important to remember, so when it goes back together you have to pre-install the bolts before putting it onto the car. So now we're going to have to find top dead center and time the engine by aligning all the timing marks. Also, I forgot to mention, you're going to want to remove the top timing cover as well. It's just two 8mm bolts right there and there. And that's where they would be on the engine. Right there and right there. And you just kind of wiggle it out through here and it comes out. Some people say you need to jack the engine up some to get it out, but I didn't have to do that. We'll have the engine timed. Those pulleys are staying up and the timing marks right there are lined up. Point to it. There's like right there you can see small dashes. I also marked, this doesn't really matter where, on the belt and on one of the teeth on each of the pulleys. So I know to get it exactly right when I put the new timing belt on. I also marked it right there, and you can see the triangle on the pulleys lined up with the triangle on the back of the engine. Now to loosen the tensioner off, which is that pulley right there, and take the timing belt. The timing belt is off. I got it right over there. I get it off. There's this tensioner right here. You stick an Allen key in it. You're not quite sure what size this is. You just rotate it backwards like that, and you get the belt off. And then when you remove the belt, you put another small Allen key right here to keep it tensioned from going too far that way. So now to remove the inner timing belt cover, you got to remove the cam pulleys, which means you got to take the valve cover off. So I'll do that now. Also, I have to remove the timing belt idler pulley, which goes right here. It's just this thing, just a 13mm bolt comes off. Valve cover's off. Just these 8 bolts, and they're all 8mm, and as well this in here, which is a 10mm you got to take off that holds on this ground right here. And there are special bolts that don't come out all the way, so that's what the valve train looks like. It's actually very clean considering it has 185,000 miles, and all this engine has ever used was just conventional Pennzoil, cheap motor oil. And the cams do have quite some wear on them, but it's to be expected at this mileage, but nothing's scored or anything, so it should be fine. And now I'm just going to clamp vice grips on right here and here and to hold the camshafts when I take the front bolt off. They do make a special tool, you can put it on the pulleys to keep them from rotating, but I don't have that, so it's fine to clamp right there as long as you're not clamping onto a machine surface like the cam lobes. Also, before you take the valve cover off, you're going to need to take off the ignition coil, which is, this thing was 4 10mm bolts, as well as disconnect the valve cover breather hose, which goes to the air intake, which is this one, and the positive crankcase ventilation PCV valve hose right there, which is right there and is hooked together by this hose, and this plug, which goes onto the ignition coil right there. And to get it off, you just pull this red piece off and it slides right off. Cam gears are off, which are right here. Just a 18mm bolt, and I've marked which one is the intake and which one is the exhaust. It probably doesn't matter because they're both the same, but mark them anyway. You got the cover off. You have the two 8mm bolts right there, a 10mm, and two 13mm. This should be one piece, and mine is broken, so but all this once it comes off, you just also this has to come off, which is a dialer pulley, 15mm, so it clears it, and you just slide that back timing coverages down the motor and just pull it out through the bottom. Well, I put the wheel back on since I don't really need to get to anything from underneath, because I don't want to leave it sitting on the jack stand for a couple of days or maybe even more than a week, because it's going to take a while for me to rebuild the head. So now lowering it down, you got to be careful because the side motor mount is taken out, and if you lower the jack with the other jack supporting the motor mount, you'll push the engine up too far, so you got to like 2 inches at a time or lower the jack that the car sits on and then the engine jack, and keep doing that until it's lowered. I also am still supporting the engine, cinder block with a piece of wood. So now I'm just going to take off the cold air intake, which is just that clamp, and cut the zip tie. If your car still has the stock air box, which is here, which also has to come off, which is the same clamp there, and there's a bolt that holds it in there, and maybe somewhere else, which I don't know. And then start unbolting the intake manifold.